Support comes from the Wiregrass Archives at Troy University's Dothan campus, identifying and preserving historical documents and photographs for research related to the Wiregrass region. More information at troy.edu/wiregrassarchives.
From Troy Public Radio, this is TPR Podcast Presents, programming made where you live. I'm Austin Toy. Every week, we bring you selections from one of Troy Public Radio's 17 locally produced podcasts. Dothan native Johnny Mack Brown has a mural in his hometown and a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. But many outside of the Dothan area might not remember the football and film star. He was a standout on a legendary 1925 University of Alabama football team that shocked the country. And he would go on to a long career in Hollywood. On this selection from the It Came From the Archives podcast, host Greg Phillips and historian Marty Oliff take a look back at the life of Dothan legend Johnny Mack Brown.
This was the era in the early 1920s when the University of Alabama really did start to become something of a powerhouse. Now, they were known in the South, and they had a series of good teams, one after the other. That 1924 and 1925 teams, I guess both of them, were particularly good and had a number of good players on them. And they were so good that they weren't the first choice to get an invitation to the Rose Bowl of 1926, which was played on January 1st, 1926. But when Dartmouth refused the invitation to play against the University of Washington, because at that time Ivy League teams did not play outside of the Ivy League, they did not accept bowl game invitations. So Bama got the invite. They were good enough to get that invitation, and it was something of a joke in other parts of the country. They were going to play the University of Washington, which was far and away the best team in the U.S. at the time, far and away. And no one outside of the South had any feeling about Southern football, except they're not all that good. They're just a bunch of plowboys who are chucking the ball back and forth, and they're second rate at best, maybe third rate. Okay, well, let's see. So there's a lot riding on this game for the University of Alabama, and they knew this, and they played it up, and it was remember, this is only 50 years after the Civil War. There was a whole lot of lost cause Southern honor involved in them going to the Rose Bowl. Now, it's my understanding that this Rose Bowl game is where they got their elephant symbol.
Really?
Yes. That a luggage maker provided a bunch of luggage for the guys to take the train over to Pasadena, and that his sales symbol, his logo, was an elephant. And the team, after winning this bowl game, quite surprisingly, adopted the elephant, or had it adopted for them as their logo and their symbol.
Wow.
And that's my understanding about how that worked. But Johnny Mack Brown was responsible for 2 of the 3 touchdowns, I think, that Alabama got. Of course, Alabama had a terrible first half in the 1926 Rose Bowl, and then they came out of that and had a couple of scores in the third quarter, and then Johnny Mack Brown at the very end, of course, the big apocryphal football hero story, makes this long run at the very end and outpaces everybody and gets that final score. So the University of Alabama beat the University of Washington by a score of 20-19. So a real nail biter right there at the end. Well, this just really made a big impression on people in California, particularly in the Hollywood area. These football players started getting contacts, a few of them, and Johnny Mack Brown was one of those who got contacted by Hollywood. But he had been contacted earlier. In 1924, a film was being made in Birmingham called Men of Steel, which I've never seen, and I don't know if it's available. It's a silent film, of course. And the character actor George Fawcett met Johnny Mack Brown when the studio gave the Bama football team tickets to come and visit the set. George Fawcett saw Johnny Mack Brown. Johnny Mack Brown was a very good-looking guy and had a lot of poise. He also had a very heavy Southern accent, which becomes a problem later on. Anyway, Fawcett encouraged him to look at Hollywood and get a screen test. And then he shows up in Southern California again in 1926 for the Rose Bowl game, but doesn't get a screen test at that time. During that year, he did not graduate. He left Alabama in 1926, married his wife Connie in June of 1926, and then moved to Dothan to sell insurance. And by the fall of 1926, he had taken a job coaching freshmen on the football team at the University of Alabama, and he said he would keep selling insurance. I don't know if he actually did, but insurance was not his game.
How does he end up back in Hollywood and getting his movie career launched?
It's actually pretty straightforward. Because he took that job as a freshman coach at Bama, Bama got invited back to the Rose Bowl on January 1st, 1927. And I'm going to say this authoritatively, there's some dispute about how he actually ended up with the screen test, but I found 2 or 3 newspaper articles that I think are pretty definitive in this case, that he went with the team back to Pasadena for the Rose Bowl. His brother was on that team, who was actually a better natural athlete than Johnny Mack was. But he hooked up with George Fawcett again, and MGM gave him a screen test, and they liked him well enough to offer him a contract. And his first movie in early 1927 was a silent movie where he appeared uncredited. He doesn't have a credit for this, but he's in Kelly Slide, which is a baseball movie. He ended up making more than 24 movies under his MGM 5-year contract. And he was opposite a lot of well-known leading ladies. They tried to make him a romantic lead. And in the silence, it almost worked. The kind of lead he played was the relatively naive younger man who was seduced in a web by a spidery, slightly older woman. He played against Marion Davis in 1927, which was his first leading role. He played against Greta Garbo. He played against Joan Crawford. He played against Norma Shearer, all in 1928. He made his first talkie in 1929 called Jazz Heaven, and he made his first Western in 1930. Directed by King Vidor, who was an extremely well-known director.
And one of the great names of early Hollywood.
One of the great names of early Hollywood, partly because he was well-known, partly because he's just a great name.
Yes.
Yeah. He made a film called Billy the Kid. And William S. Hart, the character actor and Western actor, was the technical advisor on Billy the Kid for King Vidor, and loaned Brown one of William Bonney's actual pistols, Billy the Kid's guns. And there are unverified stories that Brown ended up with that pistol, as a souvenir.
You can hear the full conversation with Marty and Greg on the It Came From the Archives podcast on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Austin Toy, and this is TPR Podcast Presents on listener-supported Troy Public Radio.